In May 1808, while the world watched Napoleon's Grande Armée steamroll across Europe, something far smaller and far stranger happened in the high Pyrenees along the Spanish-French border. Most history books reduce the Dos de Mayo uprising and the Peninsular War to battles like Bailaine or Salamanca, but scattered across the mountains that separate France from Spain are dozens of abandoned stone barracks, blockhouses, and shepherd refugees that once sheltered Spanish guerrilleros fighting a shadow war against Napoleon's occupation. One of those barracks, known today only as Cuartel Olvidado, the Forgotten Barracks, sits at 2,300 meters on the Aragon side of the Col du Portelí. Built in the 1700s as a customs post, it was seized by French dragoons in 1808, retaken by Navarrese and Aragonese partisans 3 months later in a night attack so savage that both sides later refused to speak of it. Official French records list 31 dead. Spanish accounts claim 29. Local shepherds, however, have always insisted the true count was 63 because some of the bodies simply walked away into the mist the next morning and were never seen again. For 2 centuries, the barracks lay empty. Snow buried the blood. Pines grew through the flagstones. Then, in 2019, the Spanish Army's Mountain Warfare School, Jaca 64, reopened the site as a remote survival training base. Young tenientes, cabos, and soldados arrived expecting cold, altitude, and brutal ruck marches. They got something else. Over the last 6 years, every single rotation that has spent more than 72 hours inside Cuartel Olvidado has reported the same thing. Footsteps in empty corridors, voices speaking Old Castilian and French from rooms with no doors, and the unmistakable smell of black powder and wet wool where no fire has burned since 1808. Tonight, in the exact style you've come to trust from this channel, we're bringing you 7 first-person testimonies from Spanish Army personnel who trained there between 2019 and 2024. No actors, no recreations, just soldiers telling you what they lived. Chapter 1. The First Night. Nobody slept. My name is Adrian Rivas, Cabo Primero with the Regimiento de Cazadores de Montaña, Arapiles, Nasser 62. In October 2019, I was part of the very first rotation that reopened Cuartel Olvidado after 200 years of silence. We rolled in just before dusk in 2 battered Land Rover 110s, engines coughing from the altitude. The barracks sits at 2,300 meters on a shelf of rock above the tree line, 1 narrow dirt track in, nothing out except France on the far side of the ridge. The building is a 3-story block of gray stone, windows like empty eye sockets, half the slate roof gone. Pines have pushed up through the old courtyard flagstones, and the wind sounds like it's been moaning through the same broken shutters since Napoleon was a cadet. The teniente in charge, a very correct officer from Madrid who believed in PowerPoint slides more than mountains, gave us the tour. Main corridor running the length of the building, rooms off both sides, west staircase burned away in 1808 and never rebuilt. East staircase still solid but missing most of its railing. The old chapel at the far end had no roof left, just 4 walls and a stone altar cracked straight down the middle. Everything smelled of wet rock and sheep dung. We dropped our Bergens in what had once been the guard room, unrolled sleeping bags on the floorboards that groan like old men, and tried to pretend this was just another survival exercise. 12 of us total. I drew the 0200-0400 guard shift with Soldado Primero Jesus Gomez, a skinny kid from Murcia who talked non-stop to keep the fear out of his voice. At 0155, I kicked his cot. He came up swearing, grabbed his G36, and we stepped into the main corridor. Moonlight poured through the broken windows and laid silver bars across the flagstones. Frost glittered on the walls. Our breath smoked white. You could have heard a pin drop at the other end of the building. We posted up at the eastern end, rifles slung but ready, looking back down the length of the corridor toward the chapel. 40 meters of darkness and moonlight. Nothing moved. Then it started, boot heels on stone, slow, measured, coming from the west side, where the staircase used to be. Tap, 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 like someone descending stairs that haven't existed for 2 centuries. Gomez's voice cracked. Cabo, dime que es un zorro o algo. I told him to stay quiet and listen. The footsteps reached the bottom, turned, and started down the corridor toward us. Perfect cadence. 60 beats a minute. Exactly the old French march tempo. I could feel it through the soles of my boots. They stopped halfway, maybe 15 meters away. A man's voice spoke out of the dark. Calm, educated Spanish, but the accent was old, vowels long, consonants hard like my grandfather telling stories of the Carlist Wars. Quien vive? Gomez's knuckles went white on his rifle. I felt every hair on my neck stand up. That challenge hasn't been regulation since before the Civil War. Today we say, alto, quien va, or just identifíquese. I answered anyway, because you always answer a challenge. España, Cabo Rivas y Soldado Gómez, Ejército Español. Silence thick enough to chew. Then the voice again, colder than the wind off the snowfields. No sois de los nuestros. You are not ours. The temperature plummeted. My rifle sling crackled with fresh frost. Gómez flicked on his weapon light and swept the corridor. Nothing, just swirling dust hanging in the beam like someone had walked through it a second earlier. We held position another 10 minutes, hearts hammering so loud I was sure whatever was out there could hear them. When the shift ended, we double-timed back to the guardroom, woke the teniente, and reported everything exactly as it happened. He rubbed his eyes, told us we were tired. Altitude does strange things. Get some sleep. Ordered us back to post for the last hour. We refused. Flat out. 12 years in mountain troops, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and I have never refused an order until that night. At first light, the teniente finally came out to see what we were carrying on about. We walked him to the spot where the voice had stopped. Fresh boot prints in the frost, square toes, hobnails in a pattern I'd only ever seen in museums. The tracks came from the burned staircase, crossed the corridor, and ended right there. No prints leading away. Just stopped, like the man stepped into thin air. The teniente stared a long time. Then he looked up at the empty windows, the broken roof, the mountains pressing in from every side. He didn't say anything, just turned around and went back inside. None of us slept again that rotation. And that was only the first night. Chapter 2. The Chapel That Wasn't Empty. My name is Pablo Echevarria, Teniente Regimiento de Cazadores de Montaña, Galicia, 1964. I commanded the March dos Años 21 rotation to Cuartel Olvidado, 19 soldiers plus me, sent up for a 2-week cold weather endurance package. By then, the stories had already started trickling down from the 2019 and 2020 groups. Command's official line was mass hysteria, carbon monoxide from badly vented heaters, collective suggestion. They made it very clear that any officer who put paranormal activity in an after-action report would be looking at a transfer to the Canary Islands logistics depot. So we arrived determined to treat the place like just another pile of old stones. The chapel is at the northern end of the building, 30 meters from the guardroom we used as a common area. Roof long gone, altar smashed by guerrilleros in 1808, weeds growing through the cracks in the floor. We stored our ration crates there and parked the little Honda generator in the corner because it was the only room with 4 full walls left. On the 4th night, I couldn't sleep. The wind had dropped and the silence felt wrong, too complete. Around Esoro 30, I pulled on my boots, grabbed my headlamp, and went to check the fuel level on the generator. We were rationing diesel, and I didn't want to run dry before morning. The moment I stepped into the chapel, I stopped dead. The room was full of candlelight, not the harsh white of LEDs, but soft, flickering yellow, like real beeswax tallow. 31 French soldiers in perfect 1808 uniforms, sky blue greatcoats with white lapels, black shakos, white crossbelts, knelt in 3 neat ranks facing the broken altar. Their muskets were stacked in perfect pyramids on the left and right, exactly like the old drill manuals. An officer in a darker blue coat with gold epaulets stood at the altar, missal open in his gloved hands, reading the Mass for the dead in Latin. I could smell incense, wet wool, old sweat, and something metallic underneath. Blood. My first instinct was that someone had set up the most elaborate prank in military history, but the candles were floating 2 centimeters above the stone floor. No holders, no wax strips, just flames hanging in the air like fireflies. The officer turned a page. The paper made no sound. None of them were breathing. Not one chest rose or fell. I took 1 step backward. My boot scraped on the stone. Every head turned at exactly the same moment. 31 pairs of eyes fixed on me. They were pale, washed-out blue, the color you see in very old photographs, and they looked straight through me, like I was made of glass. The officer closed the missile with a soft thud that echoed as if the roof was still there. He spoke in French, calm and formal. Vous n'appartenez pas à cette heure, monsieur. You do not belong to this hour, sir. I backed out of the doorway, never turning my back on them. My hand found the grip of my pistol, but I didn't draw. Something told me it would be as useless as shouting at a painting. I ran to the guardroom, kicked 3 sergeants awake, told them to grab rifles and follow me. Took us less than 90 seconds to get back. The chapel was dark, generator silent. No candles, no soldiers, only the ration crates. But every single crate, 48 of them, had been taken out of their stacks and rebuilt into a perfect miniature altar on the exact spot where the French officer had stood. The cardboard was arranged in precise rows, the way engineers lay sandbags. On top, someone had placed a single playing card, the King of Spades, face up, edges blackened as if it had been held over a flame. We tore the cardboard altar apart at dawn, burned every box in the courtyard just to be sure. The King of Spades was gone. No one admitted to having it. No one ever found it. That was the night we stopped pretending Cuartel Olvidado was just cold and uncomfortable. It was occupied, and the tenants did not like sharing their chapel. Chapter 3. The Prisoner in Room 7. My name is Lucia Navarro, Soldado de Primera, Regimiento de Infantería Galicia, Nuri de Sur 74. In November of 2022, they sent an all-female platoon to Cuartel Olvidado, 16 of us, because someone in personnel thought mixing up the rotations might break the pattern of whatever was happening. It didn't. They gave us room 7 on the second floor, the only space small enough that 4 of us could fit without spreading into the main corridor. The room is barely 5 meters by 4, one narrow window facing France, and a thick iron ring bolted into the wall at ankle height. Historical plaque on the door says it was the French punishment cell in 1808. Guerrillas found 2 prisoners chained there when they took the barracks. Both men had been dead for days, throats cut ear to ear. We laughed it off. Black humor is how you survive mountain troops. First night we were exhausted from the climb, so we crashed early. I took the corner nearest the ring because I'm the shortest. Around 0200 I woke up needing to pee. The room was freezing, colder. Then outside, and someone was crying. Not loud, just the kind of low, hopeless sobbing you hear from someone who's been at it for hours and has no tears left. I thought it was Private Diaz. She'd been quiet all day, maybe homesick. I rolled over to nudge her and saw all 3 of my companions were already sitting bolt upright, eyes wide, staring at the iron ring. The crying was coming from inside the wall. Then the voice, male, hoarse, pure mountain Aragonese, so old it sounded like gravel poured over Latin. Agua. Por Dios y la Virgen. Un poco de agua. Water. For God and the Virgin. Just a little water. We switched on every headlamp and phone torch we had. The beam hit the ring, and the stone around it was wet. Dark streaks running down to the floor like someone had been licking the wall. The rest of the room was bone dry. Private Ruiz, who grew up in a village 10 kilometers from the other side of the ridge, went white. She crossed herself and whispered, "Eso es el pastorcico que mataron los franceses. Le cortaron la lengua para que no gritara y lo dejaron ahí hasta que se secó." We didn't sleep again that night. At sunrise, we went back with cameras. The wall was dry, but the ring itself was dripping, slow drops that steamed when they hit the freezing floor. We tasted one. Salty, not melted snow. That afternoon, we moved our kit into the corridor. Told the teniente we preferred the draft. She didn't argue. She'd heard the crying, too. Second night, 0310. We're all 4 lined up in the corridor like sardines, sleeping bags touching. The crying starts again, but this time it's right behind our heads, inches away. We spin around with weapons up. Corridor empty both directions. 4 perfect handprints are pressed into the frost on the wall, small, narrow, like a teenager's or a woman's. The fingers are splayed as if someone was pushing against the stone trying to get out, or trying to reach us. We left the mountain 48 hours early. The official report said acute psychological stress and gender-specific environmental factors. Unofficial report, the one we all signed in blood the day we got back to Jaca, says something is still chained in room 7, and it is very, very thirsty. I still wake up some nights tasting iron in my mouth and hearing that voice begging for water. I can never give it. Chapter 4. The Roll Call. My name is Diego Herrero, Sargento Mayor, Regimiento America, November 66. July 2023. 26 of us were sent to Cuartel Olvidado for the longest rotation anyone had attempted. 14 full days. Command wanted to prove the place was psychologically manageable. We lasted 13 nights. On night 11, the weather turned strange. Thick, humid air rolling up from France. Heat lightning flickering over the ridge, but no rain, no wind. The barracks felt like a pressure cooker. Nobody could sleep. We lay on our cots, sweating in our underwear, listening to the stones tick as they cooled, and warmed at the same time. At exactly 23:47, every single one of us woke up, not sat up slowly, woke up like someone had shouted "gas" in the room. Eyes wide, hearts racing, no grogginess. A drum started outside in the courtyard. One side drum, tight calfskin, the slow cadence the French used for night funeral marches. Boom, 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 60 beats a minute. Then a voice, male, parade ground loud, perfect Napoleonic French. Caporal René Dubois, Dragoon Etienne Laurent, Sapeur Michel Garnier. One by one, 31 names. We later matched every single one to the French casualty list from 12 May 1808. The voice never hurried, never stumbled over a single syllable. When the last name rang out, Lieutenant Colonel Armand de Valaroche, the drum stopped dead. Silence so complete I could hear blood rushing in my ears. Then every door, still on its hinges, slammed shut at once. The ones that had rotted off centuries ago. Their iron hinges screamed like they were trying to obey the order anyway. We poured out into the corridor with rifles up. Headlamps cut white cones through the dust. I yelled for everyone to form on me in the courtyard. We got outside just in time to see them. 2 lines facing each other across the flagstones exactly where the skirmish happened. 31 French dragoons in sky blue greatcoats on the west side. 32 Spanish guerrilleros in brown monteras and red facings on the east. Bayonets fixed, muskets shouldered, still as statues. Moonlight made their faces bone white. I stepped forward and gave the loudest parade ground bellow I've ever managed. Alto, identifíquense. Ejército Español, identifíquense ahora mismo. Every head turned toward us in perfect unison. 63 pairs of eyes, black from lid to lid. No whites, no pupils, nothing human. They stared for 3 full seconds. Then they started walking toward us. Not charging, marching. Left foot together, perfect 1808 drill, closing the distance 10 centimeters at a time. We fired warning shots into the air. The reports echoed off the mountains like artillery. Bullets passed straight through them. No reaction. They kept coming. We fell back inside, slammed the main door, an original 400-kilo oak slab on wrought iron hinges, and piled every table crate and ammunition box we had against it. 26 grown men and women pushing like our lives depended on it. The knocking started. 3 measured knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. A voice on the other side. Polite, almost friendly, speaking perfect modern Spanish with a soft French lilt. Abran la puerta, camaradas. Solo queremos terminar la guardia. Open the door, comrades. We just want to finish our watch. We stayed silent. The knocking continued until the first gray light touched the ridge. At sunrise, we opened the door. The courtyard was empty. No footprints in the dust, no muskets, no bodies. But the inside of the oak door was covered in fresh carving. 63. Names cut deep with a bayonet or a knife. Letters perfect, no hesitation marks. The first 31 were the French dead. The next 32, the Spanish dead. The very last name, carved at eye level directly opposite where I had been standing all night, was mine. Sargento Mayor Diego Herrero Sanchez. Still have the photograph. I look at it sometimes when I can't sleep. The wood has not been sanded or painted since 1808. The cuts were wet when we found them. Chapter 5. The Fire That Wouldn't Burn. My name is Ana Beltran, Cabo, Unidad Médica de Montaña, Jaca. December 2023. My team of 5, 3 medics, 1 doctor, 1 driver, was choppered in on the 18th to evacuate the previous rotation. 3 of their soldiers had been medevaced the night before with core temperatures of 28 degrees in a barracks that was plus 5 degrees. No hypothermia risk factors, no alcohol, no drugs, just suddenly freezing to death while fully awake. We landed at dusk. The outgoing platoon looked like they'd aged 10 years in 10 days. They wouldn't speak. just handed us the keys to the generator and climbed straight into the helicopter. We went inside to secure the site and start packing medical stores. That's when the courtyard caught fire. Not the building, the air itself. Blue-white flames rose from the flagstones in the shape of men fighting. Silent. No crackle, no heat, no smoke. Just cold fire outlining 31 French dragoons retreating in good order up the west side. 32 guerrilleros pressing them with bayonets. Exactly the path described in the 1808 combat reports. You could see faces, shakos, cartridge pouches, even the flash of steel as blades crossed. They moved in perfect silence, like a film projected onto fog. We tried everything. CO2 extinguishers, dry powder, buckets of snow. The streams passed straight through the flames. The fire ignored us. It lasted exactly 17 minutes. We timed it against the field watch. 17 minutes was the official duration of the original skirmish, according to the French after-action report, recovered in 150 years later. When the last figure, a French officer with his sword raised, reached the chapel doorway, the flames collapsed into themselves and vanished. The courtyard floor was wet with fresh blood, bright arterial red, steaming in the sub-zero air. Handprints, drag marks, boot smears, exactly where men had fallen 2 centuries ago. I took samples with sterile swabs, sealed them in evidence tubes, labeled them myself. We spent the night in the common room with every light we had burning, rifles across our knees. Nothing else happened, but the smell of blood and wet wool never left our clothes. Next morning, we radioed for immediate exfiltration. While waiting for the helicopter, I walked the courtyard again. The blood was still there, bright as paint. I knelt to take more photos. That's when I noticed the temperature. The blood was warm. 237 degrees Celsius in the middle of a snowfield. Lab results came. Back 48 hours later. Human, male, O negative. High levels of black powder residue in the plasma. Cellular degradation consistent with tissue death approximately 216 years ago, yet less than 12 hours since cessation of cardiac activity. The report was classified secret the same day. The samples disappeared from the refrigerated locker at Jaca Military Hospital. The duty log for that night is blank. The doctor who signed the analysis requested immediate transfer to Suda. He got it within a week. I still have the original photographs on an SD card I keep in a Faraday pouch. Sometimes when I open the folder late at night, the blood drips off the screen and stains my desk. Chapter 6. The Last Patrol. My name is Miguel Ángel Torres, Teniente Coronel, Regimiento Arapiles número 62. In March 2024, I received sealed orders from the Jefe del Mando de Montaña. Proceed to Cuartel Olvidado with a reduced team of 8. Inventory all remaining equipment, remove classified material, photograph every room, and submit a final recommendation on demolition. The site was being permanently struck from the training map. We arrived on the 11-solder march under a sky the color of dirty steel. Snow was knee-deep, the track barely passable even with chains. The generator was still running, someone had left it on in 2023, and a single bulb glowed in the commander's old office on the second floor. No fuel should have been left after 12 months. The tank was full. Inside, the barracks felt expectant, like it had been waiting for us to finish something. We worked fast. Cataloged radios, night vision devices, the medical chest, crates of 5.56 ammunition. Then we started on the historical finds. Under the broken altar in the chapel, we located a perfectly preserved French bicorn hat. Gold braid still bright, sweatband stained but intact. No moth holes, no rot, as if it had been placed there yesterday. In the west wall of the main corridor, we counted 63 musket balls embedded at waist height in a perfect straight line, fired from a kneeling or prone position, exactly the way a last-ditch volley would have been delivered. The lead was shiny, no oxidation, but the real discovery was in the commander's office, inside a cavity, behind a loose stone. A leather-bound journal cover stamped with the Imperial Eagle, pages still supple, French handwriting, ink brown but legible, dated entries from April to 12th of May, 1808. The last page, written in obvious haste, Ils ne sont pas des hommes. Ils portent les visages des Espagnols, mais leurs yeux sont plus anciens que ces montagnes. Nous en avons tué 31 et ils se sont relevés. Le lieutenant-colonel de Valroche a ordonné une seconde charge à la baïonnette, mais les morts étaient déjà parmi nous. Si quelqu'un trouve ceci, qu'il brûle le cuartel. Certaines guerres ne finissent pas par des traités. We photographed every page, sealed the journal in an evidence bag, and radioed for immediate permission to demolish with explosives. Response came back within minutes. Request denied. Budgetary constraints. Site to be simply abandoned and fenced. That night, the dead held their court-martial. We watched from the upper windows. In the courtyard, under a moon almost full, the French formed 3 sides of a square. Their lieutenant colonel stood on the exact spot where his body had fallen in 1808. The 31 soldiers knelt in the snow, heads bowed. Opposite them stood the guerrilleros, 32 men in ragged brown, faces hidden under wide sombreros. A French officer read from a scroll, charges in French, then repeated in perfect Spanish, Traición contra le temps lui-même, traición contra el tiempo mismo. The verdict was pronounced by both commanders at once, voices overlapping like an echo that arrived before the sound. Coupable, culpable, sentence, perpetual guard. The kneeling French soldiers raised their heads. Their eyes were the same empty black we had all learned to recognize. Then, one by one, they looked up at the windows where we stood. They saluted, not the modern hand-to-forehead salute, the old Napoleonic salute, palm out, fingers touching the shako. We left at 0500 the next morning with whatever we could carry on our backs. I ordered the generator left running, the main door unlocked, the single bulb burning. 3 months later, the Army quietly erased Cuartel Olvidado from every map, every training schedule, every GPS database. But if you pull up the coordinates on a clear night with a good satellite connection, you can still see it. One lone point of light at 2,300 meters where no power line has ever reached. It has not gone out since March 2024. Some guards, it seems, are never relieved. Chapter 7. What we carry home. We are many voices now. Soldiers from every rotation between 2019 and 2024, speaking as one because none of us can speak alone anymore. Some of us dream in languages we never learned. I wake up speaking Old Aragonese, words my tongue has no right to know. Another man recites the French order of battle for the 3 Régiments de Dragons in his sleep. His wife records it on her phone and plays it back in terror because the voice is not his. Some of us find hobnail prints in the frost outside the modern barracks in Jaca, 200 kilometers away, always facing the North Ridge, always fresh, always stopping at the perimeter fence as if waiting for permission to enter. One cabo from the 2021 rotation hanged himself in the armory in 2023. The note was only 5 words. Ya terminaron la guardia. They have finished the watch. Another soldado disappeared on leave. They found his perfectly folded uniform on the exact rock where the first guerrillero fell in 1808. Boots aligned, beret centered, dog tags laid on top like an offering. No footprints leading away in any direction. The search dogs refused to cross an invisible line 10 meters from the pile. A teniente who laughed at the stories in 2020 now keeps a loaded pistol on his bedside table in Madrid. He says sometimes he hears the drum starting outside his apartment window at 23:47 exactly, and he knows if he ever opens the curtains, he will see the courtyard again. We have all noticed the same thing. Our watches stop at 23:47 when we talk about the barracks. Phones lose signal, compasses spin, dogs whine and hide under furniture for no matter where in Spain we are. The children of one sargento draw the same picture over and over, blue soldiers and brown soldiers standing in 2 lines under a broken roof, holding hands like paper dolls. The children have never been told the story. We do not gather anymore. We do not message each other on the old group chats. We know the dead listen, but we carry them all the same. 63 names are written on us now, carved somewhere no surgeon can reach. And every one of us understands the final terrible truth. The skirmish of 12th May 1808 did not end. It only changed battlefields. The war followed us home. It is patient. It is still recruiting. And the relief column will never come.